What's up, YouTube? Back with the Yu-Gi-Oh profile. This one is Zielgigas Gishki. I've kind of been away from Yu-Gi-Oh this format a bit. I've been focusing a lot on Kaijudo as my content has suggested. That game's going into its first national tournament series here just a couple days from now. That'll last over the summer. So it'll be really cool to sort of be at the front edge of that game. If you ever played Duel Masters in the past, it's like 99% the same game. I highly recommend it. It's a lot cheaper than Yu-Gi-Oh 2. So if you're looking for something else to do, or you've been sort of on the fence about it, I do highly recommend the game. But anyways, Yu-Gi-Oh has been really boring lately. But as of like 2 days ago, Hidden Arsenal 7 was legal, thus Gishki's legal, Evil Swarm's legal, Constellar's legal. Gives us some new things to do. I do have the Evil Swarm deck, but I only have one Ophion at the moment. So until I pick up more Ophions, and they have to be DT because everything else I have is DT. Otherwise, I'd be OCD about it. I just sort of wait on that deck. But Zielgigas is really, really nuts and a really fun deck to play. Even in a format now that's going to be pretty much dominated by people playing Evil Swarm. The way this deck is built, it's designed to just shit all over Ophion. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get into it. The only ritual we play are the 3 copies of Zielgigas. I wanted to play either like Soul Ogres or the Veatans with this, but them being level 8 and him being level 10, they don't pair with one another at all. So when you have the 2 of them in hand, they can't work with the Aqua Mirror to make one or the other, which becomes really problematic. So the way to fix that was to just get rid of the other ones altogether. This guy, 3,200, you can pay 1,000 to draw and reveal a card, and if it's a Gishki monster, spend something on the field of the deck. Watch out that's mandatory, so if there's nothing on field and you go into this guy like turn 1, and you hit the effect, it would force to spin himself. So keep that in mind. There is an OTK with this deck where you spam 2 Zielgigas, swing for 6,400, and then go into Gustav Max for game. So this deck isn't necessarily designed to OTK, but the OTK is there and relatively efficient and consistent as well. So just something to keep in mind. Following that up, we play 10 cards that search. We start off with 3 Stratos, which is Gishki Abyss. He searches any Gishki with 1,000 or less defense. This means besides himself. So he searches Zielgigas, he searches both of our pitch searchers, which gives him 9 targets to search every time you summon this guy. So there's a lot of search targets for him, which is really good. And then to back him up, we play a 4 Stratos, which is Ariel. Ariel can search everything. Ariel can search Zielgigas, Ariel can search Abysses, searches all the same things that Abyss does, and this guy also searches Beast, which Abyss can't search. This card's kind of slow because you have to set it, and then it gets the search on the flip. But if you're setting this next to a Zielgigas, they're not going to go offensive anyways. And 90+% of all Shockmaster plays you'll make are because of Ariel. And that in itself is way worth just sort of setting back a turn and waiting to get Ariel off. If they do happen to attack over it, and you're not going to be able to make the Shockmaster play off over it, you just search whatever pieces you need to make the Zielgigas plays, and you're still all pretty much good to go while preserving your life for that turn. So our 4 Stratoses are really good for searching out all the different combo pieces of the deck. Our direct searches for things in the deck starts off with 3 copies of Vision. Vision searches out Gishki or Zielgigas when you pitch it. And then following that up is 3 copies of Shadow, which searches the Ritual spell. Both of these guys can be used as the entire water tribute for this guy, so that's always really good. The one guy, besides Ariel, that Abyss can't search is 3 copies of Beast. Beast, these are still OCG ones. I've ordered English ones three times now. The first time was alongside these dual terminal ones. They were just the Photon Shockwave rares, and they never showed up, so I got my refund. Then I turned around and bought a set of the VT ones that never showed up, so I got my refund. And then I ordered another set of Beasts, but they came from all different places, and I've only gotten one of them in so far over the past week. The card's been the bane of my existence for this deck, but my locals doesn't care, generally speaking, so I've just been using these OCG ones. This guy, when you normal him, you special a level 4 lower Gishki from your graveyard, so you pretty much bring back Shadow, another copy of himself, or Ariel, and make rank 4 plays. Like I said, if Ariel has lived, because it's sitting next to a Zielgigas or whatever, You flip Search Beast, normal Beast to bring back another Beast or a Shadow, and then you go into Shockmaster like that. So our last 3 monsters are Defense. 2 Trag, being level 10, pairs really well with Zielgigas for making rank 10 plays. And then Gores. Level 7 doesn't mean anything here, but Gores is just Gores. That's 19 monsters. Then we play 20 spells. 2 Pot of Duality to help filter through and get to combo pieces and whatnot. Similarly, is 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Note if you're going for the OTK on like your first or second turn or whatever, and you Upstart Goblin them, you're not going to OTK them. But if they've warninged or you've managed to do other damage over the course of the game, and it's mid-late game and you're just sort of pushing to get to pieces, Upstart's absolutely fine for the deck, and it makes it play like 37. I mean, we have 10 cards that directly search something else, and then Dualities and Upstarts. So that's 15 out of 40 cards that search, which makes the deck overall extremely consistent. And then the Upstart Goblins are also designed to be instant side outs for games 2 and 3. So it just helps with the siding process a lot. We play 3 Mirrors. The ritual spell for the deck. This card, the way it's worded, is the whole reason this deck is playable. You can bounce the rituals from your grave to your hand to bounce this from your grave back to the deck. So essentially what happens is you activate this card to pitch a Zielgigas to special another Zielgigas, and then you add the Zielgigas back to the hand to put this in the deck. So it's pretty much put one Zielgigas, or reveal one Zielgigas to special another Zielgigas and add this card to the deck. Might as well be what this card says, which is completely retarded, but the whole reason the deck works. 2 copies of Salvage. You don't want to play 3 ever. There's only 6 cards, the Shadows and the Visions, that you just discard to net searches. And if you're opening with multiple copies of Salvage, you're pretty much just going to have dead cards in your hand until your grave's baited. So you don't want that to happen. Because Bottomless and Deep Prison are a bitch, there's 2 copies of Lance. If they Mirror Force or Torrential through Zielgigas and whatnot, that's not as big of a problem because you can recycle yourself back out of that. But banish things on Zielgigas is really problematic, so that's why we have triple Lance, or double Lance, and then following that is triple MST, and then the Heavy Storm just has all sorts of back row hate. Then we play Mind Control. Mind Control sort of helps for like rank 2 or rank 4 plays, depending on if we have like Trag and access to Abyss or Vision. Maybe we have level 4s on the field and they have level 4s, so we can just steal their stuff. Otherwise, you're just mind controlling to open up the space on the board so that you can try and push the Zielgigas OTK through. So that's just sort of why mind control exists, not for anything overly specific. But it has a couple purposes that all tend to work. And then pairing with mind control is 1 copy of Creature Swap. Mid to late game, when you summon an Abyss to get searches to go towards Zielgigas, if you're not going to be able to push through for game, which really isn't always, you don't like being left stuck with an Abyss on the field, so that's why we're playing the 1 copy of Creature Swap. That way, for when it's there, we can just get rid of the Abyss and steal whatever our opponent's sitting on, which is really good. Then we play the final 2 staples, Dark Hole and Monster Reborn, and the 40th card of the deck is 1 Treacherous Trap Hole. Like I mentioned with the upstarts that get sided out, Treacherous pretty much gets sided out too, because we do side quite a few traps depending on certain matchups. So there's at least 3 to 4 cards that are almost guaranteed side-out cards that sort of help ease the whole process. We have Gore's Token, because Ancient Me is awesome. This extra is almost set in stone. There's a couple things I'm doing right now just because they're fun that may not be the absolute best choice. And starting off with that is 2 copies of Gustav Max. There have been multiple games through these last couple weeks of testing where I've gone into multiple copies of Gustav. So it's definitely not a bad idea to have them, but it's not necessarily a required thing to have 2 copies of Gustav either. So one of these could easily be spun out for something else. And then just because we can, and there's nothing else that can freaking attempt it, is 1 copy of Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer. This guy I've been into a couple of times. He's kind of like going into Lucky Straight when you're playing Elemental Dragons. You're almost never going to do it, but when you do, it's just really fun. And you sort of get that, what the fuck, look on your opponent's face, which is priceless. Which is kind of why I'm playing this setup of 3 rank 10s right now. Like I said, I've been into all of these. I've been into 2 of these in one game. I've been into this guy and this guy in the same game. It does happen, so that it's not like I'm playing dead cards, but there are 2 other cards that I'm thinking about at the moment still, and if they were to come in, it's these 2 that go, and I just play with the 1 Gustav. But I'll get to that at the end of the extra deck here. The next 5 cards in the extra are pretty much dedicated to anti-Ophion. Of course, they have other uses, depending on the current game state, but the whole point is you have to use Beast to make rank 4s that will get you around Ophion to make Zielgigas plays. And the MVP of that to start with is Maystroke, so we're playing 2 copies. You just go into Maystroke, you set their Ophion, and then you run it over. Excuse me. The deck, if you're not going into Zielgigas, when you're making Exceed plays, you're pretty much playing defensive too, which is why there's like one of these for Ophion and the other one just to play defense if you have to, depending on what the game state is, for the Vers matchup. Otherwise, you're probably only going to need one of them to get over the Ophion they play and then go a bunch of Zielgigas crap and win from there. But Maystroke, this is the only deck I've ever played 2 Maystroke in, and it's absolutely an amazing decision for this deck. Another option for anti-Ophion, or maybe you want to get rid of Macrocosmos or whatever, is Diamond Direwolf. Probably the biggest jaw-dropping experience I've seen playing this deck is Snowdust Giant. Nobody knows what this guy does. You can reveal water monsters from your hand to put that many ice counters on face-up creatures on the field. So I'll just sort of evenly distribute the ice counters across my creatures. And then your opponent creatures lose 200 attack for every ice counter that's on the field. So if you're sitting on like 2 or 3 water monsters, maybe it's some of your searchers and Zielgigases and whatnot, you just reveal them because you've pretty much searched them anyways and your opponent knows what's in your hand regardless. So you just reveal them to nuke the field by like 400 or 600 points. And then allows you to get over Ophion and all sorts of problem stuff, which is really cool. And then maybe you know they have Valor, or you know they're playing Fiendish, and you've seen them duality into Fiendish, or whatever. If you know that you're not going to get your effects through that you need to get through in order to get over Ophion, your last ditch effort is to go into Pearl, 50 points higher than Ophion, and just try and run it over. If they have Mirror Forces or Deep Prisons, they do. In Game 1, they're probably still going to have their dresses mainboarded, which can make your Pearl too small, and you'll end up, suiciding yourself, just trying to kill Ophion and failing to do so. And if that happens, it sucks, but in this particular deck, chances are good they'll be siding out of their dresses if they're using their head at all, because the dress doesn't save them from anything other than Dark Hole in the deck. So with that being the case, it makes it a little safer to play Pearl, especially in Games 2 and Game 3. But it's just your final option, aside from these 3 or 4, to get over Ophion. The rest is pretty self-explanatory choices. There's Utopia, Butterfly, Corn, Dweller, Cowboy, Shockmaster, and then just for the random rank 2 plays with like Trag, or maybe you'll get 2 level 2s on the field at the same time. Rare, but you play the 1 Gotchi. Like I said, if you're making plays without a really specific purpose that the game state's requiring, and you're not going into Zielgigases because you're missing pieces, you're playing defensive, which is why the 1 rank 2 is Gotchi instead of like the Gust of Phoenix. Same reason why we're playing the 2 Maystrokes, because we're not always going to be playing against Evil Swarm, but the need's there. If I were to cut the Robo and the other Gustav Max for probably in the long run smarter choices, one would be for Emerald. Emerald is absolutely useless for the main deck. It's not needed at all, but we side pretty heavily. And once we start siding in a bunch of extra stuff, being able to recycle our Gores and our Trags as well as that extra stuff is actually really good, while helping us net a draw. So this could have decent play in Games 2 and Game 3. And the other one I don't have on me at the moment, but would be Utopia Ray. We pay thousands of life points at a time for Zielgigas, as well as possibly taking damage from attacks and things like that. So as a sort of an almost alternate win condition, it's pretty easy to set up a Utopia Ray to run things over. So Utopia Ray and Emerald may replace 2 out of the 3 rank 10s, but nothing else really can be replaced. As it stands, I've been into every card in this extra deck. multiple times across multiple matchups. So none of it's dead by any means. Our side is extremely stun-orientated. We play 2 copies of Thunder King. Sort of like gadgets or whatever. You're not going to be able to search when you're sitting on Thunder King, but it's just you stall your opponent out with it and then explode afterwards. 2 copies of Doom Cow. I love this card. People don't see it coming ever, especially as a side or just for anything in the game. Unless you're playing like some dedicated stun deck, nobody expects to see a Doom Cow being played at all. So, sort of throws them for a loop and does all sorts of good stuff. Max C's are good for things like mirror matches. Hieratic, if they, for whatever reason, goof up and don't take the OTK through Max C anyways. Especially because you're trying to draw into Trag with Max C. Good against windups. Once the minis get here, great against E-Dragons. Once the minis and stuff are everything here, this will most certainly be 3 copies of Max C. Because if you Max C when the E-Dragon deck starts to go off, they get really hesitant because they don't want to give you too many resources to try and fight against what they're doing. But that's the 6 monsters for now. We play 2 copies of Soul Taker. Opposing Thunder Kings can be, or well, not can be, are like your worst nightmare, extremely problematic. And then, of course, if you're playing like Heroes or Chaos Dragons, you can make shit miss timing, of course. So, good choices. Or, if you're like me at Locals this past weekend and get stuck up against some like Orichalcos Malefic bullshit where they got 4,500 cyber runs on the field, you need this to get over that shit because you can't rely on nailing your Zielgigas draws. On to traps, 2 debunks. Debunk hits all sorts of stuff. It takes care of Dark Worlds when they're first getting pitched, as far as Graph is concerned, as well as everything else. It gets rid of Priestess, it gets rid of Megalo, it gets rid of Wind-Up Shark, it gets rid of Gorse, it gets rid of Trag, Valor, Maxi, DD Crow. Debunk's just really, really universal. But mostly this goes in just against like Prophecy and Wind-Up, or Prophecy and Mermail. Sometimes I'll side it in against Wind-Up, depending on how I feel about the matchup at the time, because all it does hit is the Shark. And then if I'm going first, I'll side this in against Dark World, just so I can try and draw it and have a little bit of setup for turn 1 Grapha pitches and whatnot. 2 copies of Gozen Match. Everything we play is water. Our extra deck's not water, but you don't exceed a ton. Like, your only AC plays are going to be multiple copies of like Zielgigas plus Trag, or if you're summoning Beast. And then if you summon Beast and Gozen's up, just go into Dweller or Snowdust Giant and have a 22. Or Snowdust Giant if you have the hand and just lower their field with it. And you can play around Gozen really easy while putting a hurt on a ton of decks. The last 3 cards in the side deck are triple copy of Cursed Seal of the Forbidden Spell. This is 90+% for Prophecy, especially with all the new support they're getting. Unfortunately, if you Curse Seal a Spellbook of Secrets, they can still master and copy secrets, which sort of sucks. But you know, each time you hit a card with this, it lowers the options that they're able to do, which is really, really nuts. And since the mirror recycles itself, we have easy spell cards we can pitch, and whatever random spell card we might pitch that's not the mirror is still not going to be as bad getting rid of as it is to shut down something the Prophecy player is doing. I'll also side this in against like Dark World if I'm going first to try and shut down gates or drag down or Dark World dealings or something like that, because that'll also slow down the Dark World player like mad. And then if there's the mirror match and you side this in and hit Aqua Mirror, they just scoop and you win. So whether you're playing this particular build or that degenerate build that even I profiled a while back, this card's just nuts. So anyways, that's the deck as it stands right now. Let me know what you guys think. Comment, rate, subscribe. I will do a really quick overview of this one that's not almost 20 minutes long for people that don't want to sit here and watch through this long one. So anyways, talk to you guys later. Peace out.